So quantum languaging invites us to consider and utilize words beyond mere dictionary definition to encompass the energetic frequencies encoded in our words and the effects those frequencies have on the people we're talking to, on our subconscious minds, and on the world at large. And it's all oriented around the fundamental precept that language creates our entire reality.
Hello, Awakened Beauties. Finally, it's here. The truth to empower women to true inner beauty through healthy biology. And now, here is your hostess, Cassandra Keel, your organic beauty and CBD mentor, helping you stay sane, get sleep, and bring your sexy back. Sponsored by evokebeauty.com.
Welcome to the Awakened Beauty Podcast. I am Cassandra, your organic beauty positive mind management endocannabinoid mentor. And I am beyond excited today because we are having Dani Katz on the Awakened Beauty Podcast. And I don't exactly remember where I first came across her book, but it is brilliant. It had an impact on my life and those around me, and I'll get a little bit into that a little bit later. But before I bring on Dani, I'm just going to go ahead and give you a little bit of the expansive, credible, energetic bio of who she is and exactly what she's done and what she's up to today. So Dani Katz established her reputation as one of LA's edgiest literary talents by way of her bold voice and her expanded perspective and her mastery of language. Dani's practical experience and formal studies, including a master's degree in journalism. Dani has spent the past several years immersed in the study of quantum languaging and conscious communication, researching and perfecting the ways, the whys, and the hows that language influences our everyday human experience. She is the author of Word Up, Little Languaging Hacks for Big Change, and a quantum languaging consultant in her hometown of Los Angeles. I want to welcome Dani onto the Awakened Beauty Podcast. Are you with us, my dear?
I am. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, absolutely. So before we jump in to this profound topic, this very, very energetic topic, why don't we just kind of go ahead and just go back to a little bit of history on your life and really what catapulted you into this awakening about the profound meaning of language and linguistics and kind of how you ended up as this incredible consultant around quantum language.
Sure. I've been a writer for as long as I could remember. So for years and years and years, I spend my days working with words and weaving words and wrangling words. And there was a period of time in the early 2000s where I went into a deep shamanic exploration, was working with a lot of plant medicine. My life was very sort of heightened and magical. And around that time, I had a sort of an initiatory injury where I went to bed a completely healthy person and woke up with 5 compressed discs in my upper cervical spine. And my head was lurched forward and my left arm was paralyzed. And I spent a good month on the couch, immobilized and healing, kind of hobbling back and forth to my library, to the bookshelf and taking different books. And during that time, I found this book called Hidden Language Codes by R. Neville Johnson. And I don't remember purchasing it. I don't know where it came from. And the book was about this man who was shot point blank in the chest and he died. And while he died, he downloaded these languaging codes. And so after I read this book, all of a sudden I had a different relationship with words and they started showing me their coding. And so my everyday, writing time and the task of writing articles and books and whatnot all of a sudden became very multidimensional, and I was having different conversations with words that were wanting to show me different aspects. And so around that time, I had a very tight-knit community. I call them my 5D family, and we all just started playing with these languaging codes and supporting one another and reflecting back when we were hearing disempowering patterns and just seeing how quickly things were shifting as we were all up-leveling our communication patterns. I was working with these things sort of on the down low for about a decade. And then, I was being asked to speak. I was being asked to give workshops. I was asked to write a book. And so it's really only recently that I've heeded the call and said, okay, quantum languaging, like I will show up for you. And it's really fun. It's really, really life-changing in such a practical, pragmatic way.
Yeah, I love your story. And I love, what did you call them? Your 5D?
5D family.
5D family. And so going back to, when I first came across your book, I think I downloaded the Kindle version because I was like, I want it now. So I just started reading it because I was already in this stream of, you and I know, because we are part of this kind of research and mindset that 95% of us acts out of our subconscious today. So we're 5% conscious. And that, like, when I say that, it's so unnerving to understand that you are so unconscious and how you react during your day. So I brought your concepts, I didn't have the physical book at that time, to my, let's call it 5D group. And I just started like catching people's words. So I can't, or I try. And I would kind of throw the word gymnast out there and say, well, maybe I would phrase it this way or that way. And like you did probably with your group, you became so aware of how unaware you are of how your life is, how you perceive life, and your whole vernacular, how you view life just totally shifts and changes, and you can't help not want to help other people become more conscious in their life. So I can see how you got addicted to this concept. And so you had this incredible, and thank you for your story, because I think it starts with a really deep-seated experience we have in life that projects us onto this higher calling. So you're thrusted into this, okay, I get it, universe, like this is now my path. Maybe we can kind of jump into some of your book concepts, because for those that don't know, you wrote this first book, and it's incredible. It's simple. It's funny. It's kitschy. You have this like really fun cartoons. Maybe we can start there. Like, where did your cartoons come from? Because if those that pick up your book or Google you'll come up with, or even go to your Instagram page, your cartoons are just so fun. Like, where did that concept come from?
Well, first of all, thank you. I never really considered myself an artist, so it's funny to me that I do these drawings, yet friends will when they talk about me in the past, they always remember me drawing, which I don't remember. But I went through a period where I dated a painter for 5.5 years, and we lived at an art commune in Topanga, and all our friends were painters. So I was just spending a lot of time around artists who were really encouraging me. And because I've been such a perfectionist and an overachiever with language and writing, I have Mercury in Capricorn, I'm really attuned to like the just right word and the perfection of the communication. It's really fun for me to do something that I'm not very good at and that's just pure fun and pure play. So, and I think that my writing has always, it does have a tendency to be a bit heady and a bit didactic. So when I was writing for the LA Weekly, I wrote for the LA Weekly for about a decade, they would usually ask me to illustrate my articles, probably because then they didn't have to pay an artist to do it. And it creates a nice counterbalance because, as I said, my writing can require some intellectual gymnastics to dive into. So it's helpful to have these silly, playful little illustrations alongside them.
Yeah, and I think as serious as you are, to me, it captures the fun and just the tenacity of your spirit and the intensity in just a really playful, fun way. So it is very multidimensional. So I just love it.
All right, ladies, if you're looking for healthy hair, beautiful skin, and a calm, quiet, clean, collected, powerful mind with superior CBD, go to evoquebeauty.com. That's EVOQbeauty.com. And you'll receive 25% off your very first order with the code AWAKEN. Again, that's EVOQbeauty.com. Use the code AWAKEN for 25% off your first order.
And so, Going into the book, what was that like writing, that first book and putting the essence of your soul kind of out there on quantum language? And first, let's maybe define, what does quantum language mean to you?
Okay, many questions. Quantum languaging. So quantum refers to like taking something down to its smallest essence. And it also, there's sort of a multidimensional quality of the various tributaries. So for a while I was calling it empowered languaging, integrated languaging. And I've received some slack from calling it quantum languaging because a lot of people in branding are saying that quantum is sort of an overused term right now. And it's really the most accurate. Like I said, I do have Mercury in Capricorn, so I'm really a stickler for precise communication. So quantum languaging invites us to consider and utilize words beyond mere dictionary definition to encompass the energetic frequencies encoded in our words and the effects those frequencies have on the people we're talking to, on our subconscious minds, and on the world at large. And it's all oriented around the fundamental precept that language creates our entire reality.
Yeah, I love
that. That's the basis of quantum languaging. I ended up writing the book at a time where I was actually writing a nonfiction essay collection, and that was my focus. I was living in New Mexico in this tiny commercial refrigerator, and I downloaded it kind of in a weekend. It all just came through all at once, and it sat on my hard drive for years until a spiritual book publisher on the East Coast came to me and asked me if I would write a quantum languaging book. And I was like, oh, it's funny you would ask because I have one somewhere in my hard drive. And it was interesting weaving it into form around, I guess it was 2016, so it was after the election, and just watching larger collective conversations go haywire. I'm obviously attuned to astrology. I'm also an Aquarius, so I tend to stick to the outermost edges and looking at the larger macro conversation and like, okay, what's going on with humanity's evolution? Like, what is this indicating, in the larger sense? So it was cool to have that framework to write the book because I was able to orient it towards evolving our culture for the more unified, equal, empowered, and inclusive. And that is what I do keep coming back to with quantum languaging, is just how empowering it is and how it really equals the playing field when we root out a lot of the inequality and limitation that is infecting our current lexicon.
Yeah, I really love that. And, empowering and disempowering, it's just a slight shift. And it really is, I think we all can experience what that has been in our life. We've all had really negative people in our lives, and most of us experience being our own negative because we are our own, that own voice. And I always, being a clinical hypnotherapist, I always related to you're the master of your gene. And so if you don't know you're the master, you're letting like your employees kind of boss you around, and they are not the master. They are not the sole creator. And so we've all felt maybe verbally abused in our lives. We've been the verbal abuser of our lives. And there is a very kinesthetic experience we have, and puts us in depression. It gives us, our autoimmune system goes on the tank. So there is a very physiological thing that happens to empowering and disempowering words. Now, from your point, this kind of started around the election, which was a huge shift in consciousness at the time of that election. And so I think one of the bigger things is looking at the outer and then bringing it down into the micro. So when we can look at the macro of our lives, that's really our ecosystem, and then bringing it down to the micro and how powerful that is, you've kind of changed and shifted from the book, and you really have narrowed it down, and you've gotten really, really precise on kind of how that is coming through in your life right now, which you've made some shifts yourself. And so I'd love to hear kind of where this previous journey and now 2 election cycles later, where this leaves you now in your next big thing.
Sure. Yeah, great question. And I agree with everything that you are saying. My most potent experiences of quantum languaging come from my own self-talk. And having historically had a natural inclination towards dark moods, sullen states, melancholy, whatever we want to call them. My preference is to not name things. When I found myself stuck in those dark places, it's when I tune myself to how I'm speaking to myself that I realize that I am in, as you said, like I'm in charge of my ship. And the more that I'm repeating those negative phrases, the more I'm creating that. And I have found the most empowering mood shifting technology to be self-talk and quantum languaging. And so, taking ownership of my internal state and taking it upon myself to shift my internal state by how I'm speaking to myself has been hugely transformative, massively transformative, changing my relationship to myself, to my self-image, to how I present myself to the world, to my abundance, to my work, to my empowerment, to my relationships. It's all coming from how I'm speaking to myself. That's been amazing. And I've been tracking culture as a cultural critic for decades now. So this has been my new focus, is watching, I'm more like transpersonally oriented. And as an Aquarius, like I feel for the collective. So when the collective is in disarray or it's very polarized, I'm feeling that a lot of the time, as are so many of us, transpersonal empath types. So as I've been looking at what's been going on and seeing society become more and more fragmented and more divisive, I'm looking at the origin points and looking at what are the solutions and seeing, wow, it's the language. It's 100% the language. And so what I've honed in on recently, I recently did a workshop that I toured through the Pacific Northwest in Canada about the language of empowerment. And through refining that workshop, I started to hone in on hierarchy as the overarching construct enslaving and distorting our culture, because hierarchy alleges that there needs to be losers for there to be winners, that there has to be a marginalized group for another group to be on top. So this is a distortion. And what I've realized is that hierarchy, this structural distortion, is sustained through language. And so I've started to hone in on hierarchy in language, and where we're disempowering ourselves and disempowering one another through the words that we're speaking. So I've shifted from more like getting myself on track and upleveling my own life, and as well as my, my personal coaching clients, to seeing, okay, how can we use this work to evolve the culture and evolve the world into a more empowered, inclusive, equal, abundant, all of us.
Yeah. And so I know this is profound, both in your message and where this is going to go on different levels. So I believe that because information is easy to find now and it's all over, and that shift, and I think the world is more ready for this kind of languaging, these kind of vocab words, things of that nature. It's more acceptable at this time. And so where you're going with this is, and we talked about this differentiation between hierarchy and heterarchy. And when I think about hierarchy, I really think how deep this is. Because if we go all the way back to the beginning of time, systems have always been set up on hierarchy. And whether you call it Maslow's law or what have you, there's these levels of self-awareness and self-actualization. But for some reason, people want to put themselves under people. And it's like this instinctive thing we do as humans. And part of it's our own talk. It's where we feel like we fit in the world. It's our own self-defeat. It's all of these things. But there's a very distinct difference between hierarchy and heterarchy. And so if we could just break those two things down on what that looks like for you, because I think it's really profound to differentiate those, and for us to step out of the camp of hierarchy and not necessarily get pissed at the system, but to understand the system and where it came from and how deep it is, so that we can first become our own change agent, so that we can become a part of the heterarchy. Maybe you can kind of explain that a little bit more.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just to speak to not getting pissed at the system, like we sustain the system. Yep. We acquiesce. We give the system our power through our language. So it's on us. We can It's on us to change it. It's on us to perpetuate. Totally. So hierarchy is a system of organization that privileges one or the other. It's dependent upon status, like this. Whereas heterarchy is a system of organization where everything is equal. Nothing is valued over the other, right? Like we all have different roles and we all have different gifts, but no one is privileged or given status over the other. We are speaking hierarchy all day, every day. So hierarchy as an overarching cultural structure is dependent upon victims, right? It's dependent upon our disempowerment, so that we can be striving for the top, so that we can be competing for a limited array of resources, so that there's fear and lack and limitation that keeps us chasing carrots, that keep the matrix running, that keep oligarchy running, and that keep us under the illusion of being separate, which makes us easier to control.
Yep.
So that's a big piece of this sort of like giant trend in victimization right now, and in people sort of lobbying to be the biggest victim, right? That all feeds hierarchy. That all sustains that structure.
For you, listeners of Awaken Beauty podcast, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. Simply go to www.audibletrial.com/awakenbeautypodcast. That's www.audibletrial.com, Awaken Beauty Podcast.
So let's talk about victimhood in the macro. What does that look like in the macro?
So victimhood is alleging that we are not the authors of our lives, that some external agent has authority over us, and that we are disempowered to that external authority, which is a lie. That's not true. So it's interesting because if you look up empowerment on Google right now, the very first definition that comes up and like the 4 that come under will say authority given to someone by an external source. Mm-hmm. But if you go down to the Cambridge definition, it's our own internal authority. It's knowing our internal authority. So it's interesting to see how the powers that be are kind of messing with the lexicon right now. So in victimhood, we're denying that we are 100% responsible for our reality. We are denying our responsibility and our blessings as reality creators. And instead, we are pretending to be disempowered to external sources, to circumstances, to other people, and we're giving our creative authority / power away. That's victimhood.
Yeah. And it comes up in all areas and places in our life. And so we are not victims. And I mean, it's just not the truth. We are not a victim to anyone, anything. And really, it does come down to taking personal responsibility in our lives and awakening to the lies that we've either believed, that we were born into. And so I think the first thing to empower is to really, really sit down and think about those stories that we tell ourselves in our lives, and then these quote unquote systems that we perceive ourselves in, and really look at where am I the victim and where do I feel like I'm the victim in this, and then maybe making that mind shift. So how would you help someone with your gymnastics of wording to help someone, empower them to understand that they're not a victim and to change that shift?
So if we break down the etymology of authority, it comes down to we are the authors of our lives, right? We are the ones writing our own story. So when people are running victim stories, when I am working with clients who are running victim stories, I just ask them, like, how's that story serving you?
Right.
Is that story making you feel good? Is that story helping you live the life you want to live? Okay, then rewrite it. Yeah. We can write our stories however we want to write them. And I choose to write my stories for the most empowering, instead of, like an example that I often give is if I show up to give a workshop and I haven't gotten enough sleep and I'm over caffeinated and I'm not grounded and I blunder, I can call a friend afterwards and be like, oh my God, I messed up. I'm such a screw up. I'm such a disaster. Or I could tell the exact same story and be like, wow, I wasn't prepared. That was a really valuable lesson. I learned a lot about what I actually need to do to prepare, and I'm going to make a different choice next time. Mm-hmm. Same thing happens. It's just, how do I decide to frame that story? Am I going to frame that story in a way that empowers me to be my best, or am I going to frame that story in a way that's going to make me feel small and shitty? It's totally on me.
Yeah, and it puts you back into your past. It puts you back into your past story. It puts you back into it puts you into the present moment. Like your shift there, what came to me is that, okay, now I'm back in the present moment. I'm right here, right now. I learned from that situation. It's part of my past. I learned this is how I will shift it and change it moving forward when I find myself in that state again. And I love how you brought etymology back to authority. And there's a really powerful shift that I will do in hypnotherapy sessions where I actually have them visualize their own book, and they turn the page and then they actually go through the action of picking up the pen and starting to then write their story from then forward, taking personal ownership, taking personal awareness, what they learned through whatever we have processed before. And there's a whole energetic shift that I see that changes the person's whole persona. When they actually pick up the pen, it's actually the realization that, oh, I have the pen. This is my pen. I write my story. And then they either end up mad or empowered or sad, but they then leave knowing that this is my pen. I write my story and I take authority over my own life. And so what I loved about that story is that it puts you back in the present moment, not into the past story or fumbling or what have you, and brought you back into the future, pacing forward. Powerful.
I appreciate you saying that. A big piece of quantum languaging, one of the basic fundamentals is understanding how time works, and that our present moment is a result of our past choices, our past stories, and that in this present moment, we are sovereign and we are free and we can write our futures however we choose to now. And so if we want, as we want tomorrow to be different, we write different stories today. We make different languaging choices today. We make different choices today. That's the only way that we transform our lives.
Yeah, and I think I totally agree. And there even didn't stretch that further. You created, okay, I'm looking at this huge quantum and I'm looking at this huge kind of outer peripherals of, whatever the frequency is of that. Because you brought a vision to yourself on where this is now and where this is going by basically seeing the outer fringes of the energy.
Right.
And how you needed to change it, because somewhere in the energetic outside of time, you captured, okay, what is this vision forward, both for me and the greater message that needs to be brought to society. And also taking ownership. My point is taking ownership of who do I want to become? Really getting clear on that, because if you're not clear, then you're just waking up and you're kind of wham, bam, boom on whatever your day brings you. Yeah, you're being conscious, but it's kind of sloppy. And so I also think taking that one step further is, who do I want to become? And then making the actions daily to become that. It's not how you feel. It's not what my circumstances are, because then you're a victim again. It's what are you creating each day to capture that vision, even though the vision may change, right?
Absolutely. A big piece of the work that I do with coaching clients and even consulting clients is getting clear on what you want. Who do you want to be? What do you want to create? And then also collapsing the perceived distance between where we are now and where we want to be, and understanding again how time works, right? Because time is not a linear conveyor belt that leads us birth to death. Time is multidimensional and simultaneous, happening on multiple dimensions at the same time. So when I connect to a desire, a goal, a vision in this dimensional construct, that's because it already exists on another dimension. So quantum languaging allows us to collapse that perceived distance and to allow those future visions to inform us, to remind us, okay, how did I create you? How did I write that book? How did I lead that revolution? How did I buy that island? and then dealing with these things as present moment, already here realities, and allowing them to inform us in this here and now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, love that. So powerful. Tactical question. You're consulting.
Yes.
And so when we put this quantum topic, energy, as far as corporate, I'm really fascinated to hear, how do you bring this into a corporation, and what does that look like if somebody is hiring you as a consultant to shift their organization?
It's super fun. I love working with corporations. So what it looks like is generally the corporations that I work with have everyone read my book. And I will come in and do a lot of discovery and ask the team members, what's working, what isn't working, observe how the communication is going in person, how the email communication is going. And I have a 5D ear, so I'm listening on so many different levels and seeing, what are the distortions that are slipping in between the words, and just seeing the inefficacies and the breakdowns between the aims and the intentions and the current communication culture. And then I work with the individuals and I work with the teams together to create, quantum languaging strategies to up-level the communication. I help with the communication of collaboration, the communication of sales, the communication of success, and just because when we align the team to be speaking the success and the aims in present moment definitive languaging that's also expansive and cooperative, things move so much more quickly. Like a lot of the hierarchical languaging that I see, just to come back to that. So when we're speaking unconscious status power games with people, we're inciting fight or flight responses in the body that are shutting people down, because we all, as we all have those reptilian brains. So when we are speaking to someone and we're sort of, again, like unconsciously alleging to have authority over them or putting them down or creating us-them factions, we are inspiring fight or flight responses in their brains and in their neurochemistry that is shutting them down, that is armoring them, that is having them unconsciously signal that they are not safe, and then they're not open to free-flowing collaboration. So a lot of what I do when I work with corporations and with teams is root out where that is unconsciously and inadvertently happening, so that we can open up the doorways for expansive, safe collaboration and get that stuff out of the way so that, everyone can optimize their genius and use it in service to the mission.
Yeah, I would love like a really practical example of that. Because when I really think of a corporation, I think of old way of systems. You've got the top, you've got the next level, you've got the mid-level manager, you've got, all these different quote unquote hierarchies where people stand in their position and they kind of point down and tell people what to do, whether they're totally right for the job or not. They just stand in their position and shut people down all day. And so it's a massive shift for corporations. So can you give me a real example of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So one example would be to veer away from prescriptive languaging, from second person prescriptive languaging. So regardless of one's status in the company, instead of saying your sales calls are running too long, it would be let's aim to cap our sales calls at 6 minutes. So to make it inclusive, so to root out any sort of coming from me and speaking as a we and a let's. That goes such a long way in creating a collaborative, safe environment. And that's a tiny, tiny thing, just getting away from the you, me. Another one would be the word should, which I talk about in my book. So when we're delivering instructions, instead of you should do this or I'm going to need you to do this, to make it more of an invitation, like how about if we, or why don't we try, and to make it more of a like curious shared exploration the more that we can speak to one another as an inclusive we, the safer and more coherent our teams and our collaborations are going to be and operate.
All right, ladies, if you're looking for natural, organic, solution-based beauty and superior CBD, go to evoquebeauty.com. That's EVOQbeauty.com and receive 25% off your very first order with the code AWAKEN. Again, that's EVOQbeauty.com. Type in the code AWAKEN for 25% off your first order.
I just wanted to have a real example of how minute the changes are.
They're so tiny. Yeah. They're so little and simple, and they do so much to improve production and productivity and sales and expansion exponentially. These like tiny, simple shifts. It's amazing.
Yeah. And there's all different, that's why I really love your message, whether it's quantum language or this really next step for you and hierarchy versus heterarchy, because we've all been a part of these systems and we all know how it feels. We all know how it feels to be in fight or flight, even though you're not in it. And you don't know you're consciously. And like last night, I was part of my 5D group, and one of my friends has this profound company. It's called Prophecy, not Prophecy, but Prophecy. And they're kind of on this breaking point of hitting their hockey stick. In which, what I mean by that is right time, right market, and it's a valid need in the market. And they're speaking to the accounting industry. So talk about an industry with your heads down, just do your work, get your hard work done. They really don't look up, and they're not really, they tend to be in the characteristics where they're just really hard workers and focused on what they're doing. And, he was having this conversation with his team about going back to the master of the genie. Even when you're doing outbound sales calls or doing coaching calls with whoever, the company is, they're working with people all over the world, and certain industries, think that they're going extinct, where you just simple encouragement. I know you can do this. You've got this, you absolutely. And just empowering them with little pieces like that too, just little small pieces of encouragement can help their master tell the genie, yeah, I can do this, because sometimes it takes external forces to kind of get us woken up and kind of tipped up out of our funk. And so just those small, minute changes in corporate structures are so profound on the evolution of the micro and macro businesses and how it really changes the world.
Absolutely. Yes, and instead of but. That acceptance, it allows people to feel safe and then to take more creative risks in suggesting other wonderful things. So the more approval, the more yes, the more welcoming and inclusive we are in our languaging, the more that our employees and our colleagues are going to show up and give to the mission.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We're both women, and we're on the podcast. I think that this is a really powerful time for women. And when we were chatting, you had a very, very strong point, and I've seen it in some of your social media as well. We're kind of hot and heavy around the feminist evolution and different brains. And I just want you to kind of just shift that a little bit. And we're not disempowering women and our power that we're wanting to have a voice, because we're all about that. But really just how, when we put these things out there, how it can actually be the antithesis of what we're trying to actually do. So explain the women and kind of take down the feminine kind of piece.
Sure. So I do not identify as a feminist. I am a humanist.
Right.
The mere statement, like, I will fight for women's to have equal rights, brings our equality into question. Like, it's such a no doubt. Like, I will fight for the right to inhale oxygen. All of a sudden, I'm like, wait a minute, is oxygen now not okay to inhale? Like, it calls it into question.
Right.
So that is why I don't identify as a feminist, and I don't align myself with anything that would bring my, our empowerment and our equality into question, because it isn't a question, it's a no duh. And for me, it's more about standing in it and embodying it and radiating it and not speaking in ways that call it into question or make it seem like it's something that isn't and that I would need to fight for. On top of the fact that fighting is a tool of the patriarchy. Like if we break it down to like masculine tools and feminine tools, it's not how the feminine works. We don't fight, we include and we expand and we rest and we embody, we are. So I'm not aligned with this new feminist movement. I move through the world as I choose, feeling empowered, feeling equal, and doors open for me, and that's how I roll. And I don't allow anything into my subconscious mind or into my field that would counter that. That's not my reality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. And I just wanted to share again, just like nuance on that, because I think when we look at like a social media stream and we see those really cool visuals of like women and the fists and all of that, it kind of like brings out this inner roar inside of you. But I do not personally believe that it's like this intuitive, yeah, I'm a woman, I'm going to stand up. It's the intuitiveness that actually I think that we are reacting to, is that I matter. I have, individuality. And I really think that it's more of how do we express our unique ability? How do we express who we are, our life experiences, and all of these things? But yes, again, it goes to that you versus us type of thing. Anytime we want to empower everybody. But when we continue, again, putting ourselves into these buckets, we are becoming the victim of what that bucket is. And becomes, again, you versus us kind of thing. And so, again, it's the antithesis.
It's completely the antithesis. Like, I'm getting a visual on the T-shirts I see a lot in Los Angeles. The future is female, which is so absurd because
leaves everybody else out.
Because little boys have eyes and brains. So little boys see those shirts and think, oh, I don't have a place in this future. And again, it's like, the future is integrated. The future is all of us. It's all of us working together. And it's so crazy right now to just see people dividing and fragmenting into these smaller and smaller factions, which is, again, a tool of hierarchy. Like the people who are choosing to profit off of our slumber and the illusion of our separation are the ones who are benefiting from all this ridiculous infighting over identity. And yeah, I'm not into it.
I'm not into it either. But, I wanted to bring it up as a note of empowerment for us to, again, unvictimhood ourselves, even as females, really wanting to have a voice that's incredible. How are you unique? How are you, how do you use your voice for good? And then taking these tips like Dani has on using those quantum shifts. Not only, I think first we have to start with ourselves, and then it expands out from ourselves as we change our frequency and our energy and how we use words for empowerment, and how that just intuitively starts to integrate and be a part of you and then just kind of pours out of you. And that's why I think that your message is so powerful, because it starts with ourselves and our own hyper-awareness.
100%. And as well as a hypnotherapist, I know that that the subconscious mind doesn't understand prefixes and suffixes like un or limitless. So when we say unvictimize ourselves, we're defining ourselves as victims. And that's just not my experience as a woman, to all of a sudden to be expected to embrace this role as a marginalized, privileged class at this stage of the game is just not something that I'm willing to sign on to.
Yeah. And even saying I'm not a victim. You're saying I'm a
victim.
So I'm not a victim. More so changing that, shifting that.
I'm empowered.
I'm
an empowered badass.
That's right. I'm a self-empowered badass with an incredible, immense amount of knowledge and personal experience to share with the world. It's just, we can make this ecosystem change the ecosystem around us, and that's how powerful. But I love your language gymnastics there, because it is very, very true. So picking up on that, well, I'm not means that you're telling your genie that you are. So,
of course, like, why would we bring it into the room? Like, it's like, I'm not an elephant. Like, where did that come from? Like, what, so when anyone tells me I'm not, or I don't mean to, I know that they are, and they absolutely mean to. Yep. So, yeah, it's all really backwards right now. Like, an anti-racism movement is only going to strengthen racism. If you go on the World Bank's website, they're an anti-poverty group. Like, no wonder they're not very effective. If it's like a global prosperity group, fantastic.
Part of that.
Right. If we're like a unified human species movement, again, I'm all for it. But any of this anti stuff is just not, it's like, I don't buy anti-aging products. It's crazy.
Amen. Back to the woman talk. It's one thing. We have our Evoke Beauty brand, and I say all over my website, I believe in self-empowering women. We are not an anti-aging panacea, and just that is a Pandora's box that we could open up. But I mean, the way that beauty industry has pounced on women since the beginning of time is also a whole other fixation.
Yeah. It's vampiric in the way it preys upon that. So yeah, and as you know, like, anytime we say anti-aging, we're invoking the energetic frequency of aging and attuning our attention to aging.
What do I need? It's something like when a woman sits down in my chair, like, the first thing they do is they look in the mirror and they go, oh my God, like, oh, I just look awful today. And it's like, boom, right there. I'm in their presence, and I'm saying, oh my gosh, you look incredible today. How are you? And I just changed their state right away. Because one, it's going to change their experience with me. It's going to change their experience and how they leave feeling at Beauty Your Organic Salon. And it's going to change their state being, even if it's just for that moment in time, of noticing where they were, and then just gradually having those conversations while they're here for that hour and a half to empower them. Where many people in the beauty industry, unfortunately, we get a part of that, like, little thread of energy where then it just becomes like negative. Like, let's take a break room, for instance. Like, did you hear about Susie? I love Susie. What did you hear about Susie? Like, it just disempowers them to want to go and gossip or be negative, because again, that's that faction where we're putting somebody down so we can be above. It's just another example of how it's insidiously everywhere, and how you have to be your own change agent.
Exactly. And we also have to be our own best friends, and like, focus our attention on what is beautiful and what we love and what's amazing. And I was thinking about our conversation from a couple of days ago, and I feel like when we're critical of, I look shitty or whatever, like, it's very ungracious as far as being creators' creations. Mm-hmm. There's something about it that I just find very rude, and being like an ungracious guest on planet Earth, to assume that, like, that this isn't okay, because this is how, the forces of nature made me, and I have respect for nature, and I have respect for creator. So for me to determine with my little monkey mind and my ego that that's wrong and that's not good enough, like, that just feels off. It feels very arrogant.
It is arrogant. And we are creators, and we are beautiful creations, and that's the truth,
Yeah.
And so it really is unwinding these ropes, kind of literally like a rope, just unwinding one rope at a time, so that we really can break free and be free in our life and be these beautiful creations, and how much more we serve the ecosystem that we coexist with. I mean, that just doesn't have to be a human being. It's the very energy, being thankful for the very energy that we are able to be part of, and we are reciprocal to then put out. I mean, that's how we live. Everything is energy. So it's all reciprocal. It goes out and it comes back in, and so we choose that.
All right, ladies, if you're looking for healthy hair, beautiful skin, and a calm, quiet, clean, collected, powerful mind with superior CBD, Go to evoquebeauty.com. That's EVOQbeauty.com. And you'll receive 25% off your very first order with the code AWAKEN. Again, that's EVOQbeauty.com. Use the code AWAKEN for 25% off your first order.
And moving forward, so you have this trajectory and you have a passion about talking what we just experienced here on our conversation and all these different areas that we experience hierarchy and how we can create a more level playing field on being creators, these beautiful creations, to heterarchy. What's next for you? I know you've got possibly maybe another book, you're doing some talks. I really want to know where people can find you and track you as you move forward in this journey.
I appreciate that. So I've been taking a pause after touring this language of empowerment workshop because I realized that I was onto something pretty massive with the hierarchy, heterarchy. So I've been catching my breath, redoing my website, getting all my ducks in a row. What's next is doing more writing on hierarchy, heterarchy, creating more articles, creating more videos. My sense is it's going to be a book, recording the audiobook version of Word Up Little Languaging Hacks for Big Change, getting this work out there in a really big way so that everyone can benefit. That's what's happening next. And with everything quantum languaging, I take direction from the words and from that system. So I've been prepping to be able to really show up for it and choosing to work with more corporations, more needle movers, more, big paradigm shifters with a big trickle down effect so that I can impact the most people as quickly and effectively as possible.
That's incredible. Just incredible. I'm very, very excited for you. Everything that you've done up to this point has proven, it proves your message and just the need of the time on this message in itself. And that, you with others are leading this whole really important piece about taking personal responsibility, not being a victim in our lives, being self-creators. And so curious, who are some really inspirational people that have inspired you?
Good question. Patti Smith. Patti Smith is my crone role model. And I love that she speaks her mind and does what she wants to do and continues to be creative and generative and break down barriers. And she's so authentic. I love her. Hypatia, Joan of Arc, Martin Luther King. The truth tellers, it's the people who speak big, bold truths and don't need to win popularity contests in the meantime.
And then one last thing I always ask on the Awaken Beauty podcast, what is something personal that you have awakened to in your own life as a person?
I felt like I just gave you one. Oh, right. I recently had a breakup that I did not see coming and I did not initiate. And what I realized when it happened in the moment, I had this beautiful this person isn't my man. My man wouldn't treat me like this. This is so disrespectful. I'm not having this in my life. And I just felt such self-empowerment and such self-love and this knowingness of my love is sourced from within. My self-worth is sourced from within. All the love that I shared with this person came from me, came from spirit, doesn't belong to him, and I get to keep that, and that's so amazing, and I get to expand on that and have more of that in a more aligned fashion. So it was interesting because that breakup was like a quantum leap evolution for me where I really knew my value and held myself so closly and so tight and with so much self-respect, and that was a big game changer for me.
Yeah. I love that, and it really it magnified your own self-love. It created this larger pool of you identifying just this incredibleness about yourself versus the other way in which we often go with relationships. And so it's really profound, and it's a beautiful story for other women to really look at and just crushing your own life. So thank you for sharing that. And Dani, where can we find you on the internet?
You can find me at danikatz.com, and you can click through everything from there. You can click through to my book, to my quantum languaging site, to my Instagram, to my YouTube channel. They're all there.
Awesome. And you'll have a new website soon?
Yeah, so I'm updating my quantumlanguaging.com site. It's so fantastic, and I'm so super excited about it, and it'll be ready to launch. I'm trusting by the time this airs.
Awesome. Well, we'll certainly put that in the show notes as well, and where to find you. And for all of you, thank you for joining the Awaken Beauty podcast. I hope that you took just a wealth of love and insight into your own personal life, your own personal energy, and how you can use that in a more constructive, loving way from our guest Dani today. Isn't she wonderful? So make sure that you go and subscribe to the Awaken Beauty podcast wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And until next time, stay sane, get sleep, and bring your sexy back.
Hello, Awaken Beauties. Thank you for joining Cassandra today. Were you inspired to bring your sexy back? Please like and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Interested in high-quality natural products for your hair, skin, and wellness? Please visit evoquebeauty.com. Again, that's evoquebeauty.com. EVOQ beauty.com. Until next time, stay sane, get sleep, and bring your sexy back.